For decades, we accepted a convenient fiction. Donald Trump crossed paths with Jeffrey Epstein. That much was undeniable. Everyone acknowledged that dark intersection. But Melania, she was positioned as the exception, the untouchable one, the woman who simply materialized at precisely the right moment, immune to the stains spreading across everyone else in that toxic orbit. That carefully constructed narrative is crumbling, not through whispered rumors or shadowy accusations, but through a legal confrontation that refuses to be silenced. And the timing? It couldn't be more devastating. While America hemorrhages trust, while power structures desperately scramble to control the story, a fundamentally different portrait of Melania Trump is being dragged into the harsh light of scrutiny, one that forces us to ask a question that makes everyone uncomfortable. Was she merely adjacent to the darkness, or was she standing right in the middle of it? To grasp why this revelation matters now, you need to understand the brutal context of this moment. Nothing happening right now is coincidental. It's January 2026. The nation is convulsing through its most violent social upheaval in generations, triggered by the fatal shooting of ICU nurse Alex Pretty during an immigration raid in Minneapolis. Fury spreads like wildfire through American streets. National Guard troops mobilize. The country bleeds. And right in the eye of this storm, a glossy $40 million documentary about Melania Trump quietly debuts. The contrast feels obscene. While half the nation watches smoke rise from burning streets and hears the wail of sirens, the other half is being seduced into velvet theater seats to consume a meticulously sanitized story of grace, strength, and patriotic devotion. A story engineered to soften her image, to freeze it in amber before something uglier takes hold. But here's the problem that won't disappear. The real battle isn't about optics anymore. It's about what that polished film is desperately trying to compete against. Because at the exact instant this documentary attempts to define Melania Trump's legacy, a court filing is systematically dismantling it. And unlike a film, this document carries the weight of legal consequences. This isn't a clash over box office numbers or critical reviews. This is narrative versus sworn testimony, image versus evidence. On one side stands a slickly produced media project. On the other, legal filings, cease and desist threats, and a journalist who refused to blink. That's where this story truly ignites. In late 2025, Melania Trump's legal army fired off a cease and desist letter to journalist Michael Wolff. The message was crystal clear and laced with menace. Retract your allegations immediately, or prepare for a defamation lawsuit seeking damages that could reach $1 billion. For most people, that letter would mark the end. Most authors would fold under that kind of pressure. Most publishers would panic and bury the story. Most narratives would vanish without a trace. This one didn't. Instead of retreating into silence, Wolff made a stunning move. He struck first. He filed a declaratory judgment action under New York's anti-SLAPP statutes, essentially challenging Melania Trump to bring her fight into the open courtroom arena, not through carefully worded statements, not through high-priced PR proxies, through discovery, through evidence, through depositions under oath. And discovery is where comfortable lies go to die. Once a defamation lawsuit crosses into the discovery phase, everything changes. Truth transforms into a complete defense. Documentation becomes currency. Silence stops being an option. In a filing submitted this January, Wolff's legal team laid bare what they claim Melania Trump is fighting desperately to bury. They didn't present it as speculation. They didn't frame it as tabloid gossip. They positioned it as material evidence directly relevant to the truth of previously published reporting. And at the center of everything, Jeffrey Epstein's name. Let's be absolutely clear about something crucial. What follows are allegations, claims embedded within legal documents. They remain disputed. They are not rulings. No court has adjudicated them as fact, but they matter profoundly because courts don't simply ignore uncomfortable claims just because they're explosive. According to Wolff's filing, the widely accepted story of how Melania met Donald Trump contains significant gaps. The official version tells us they met in 1998 at a Manhattan nightclub during Fashion Week. A chance introduction, a model, a businessman, destiny. The alternative version presented in the legal filing paints something far darker. It suggests the introduction wasn't random, it was orchestrated. The social circle wasn't coincidental, it was curated. And Jeffrey Epstein wasn't watching from the margins, he was pulling the strings at the center. The filing alleges that Melania Trump moved within what Wolff characterizes as Epstein's broader network of models and social companions throughout the late 1990s. Not all of them graced fashion runways. Not all of them achieved household recognition, but they served a specific function: access. According to these claims, Epstein orchestrated dinners, hosted gatherings, and arranged private events specifically designed to connect powerful men with young women trained to be visible without disruption, present without demanding attention. Wolff alleges Melania was not unfamiliar with this ecosystem, that she attended these events, that she knew Epstein socially, that her connection to Donald Trump may have originated in that environment, not on some crowded dance floor under disco lights. But one allegation towers above all others, one claim that sent shockwaves through legal circles when the filing became public. In the document, Wolff describes a recorded interview he claims to possess, an interview with Jeffrey Epstein himself, captured years before Epstein's death. According to Wolff, Epstein allegedly stated on tape that he was the one who introduced Donald Trump and Melania, and that their first intimate encounter didn't happen in any public venue. It happened aboard Epstein's private aircraft, the Boeing 727, known around the world by a name that makes your stomach turn, the Lolita Express. Again, this is a reported claim, not verified fact. The tapes haven't been authenticated in open court. Epstein is dead and cannot be cross-examined. Melania Trump's legal team categorically denies everything, but even unproven, the implication is seismic, because if the origin story of the Trump marriage traces back to a plane synonymous with exploitation and abuse, it reframes everything that followed. It doesn't assign guilt automatically, but it raises profound moral, historical, and psychological questions that no glossy documentary can erase. Was she unaware of what was happening around her? Was she trapped in a system she couldn't escape? Or was she simply silent? And silence, as history has brutally demonstrated, can mean many things. Melania Trump's attorneys have responded with fury. They argue her name doesn't appear on flight logs the way alleged victims' names do. They label the claims defamatory, false, and malicious. But Wolff's filing counters with a chilling argument. Absence from logs doesn't equal absence from events. As the filing coldly states, you don't log the inventory. That single line shifts the entire debate from paperwork to power, because this story transcends flight manifests. It's about proximity, about who stood close enough to see and who chose to look away, which brings us to a photograph that circulated for years but is now being examined with fresh eyes. A picture from Mar-a-Lago circa 2000. Donald Trump, Melania, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. They're smiling, relaxed, comfortable. Wolff's argument isn't that this photo proves criminal activity, it's that it proves familiarity. And familiarity within that specific social orbit came with knowledge. According to the filing, it would have been nearly impossible to move within Epstein's world during that period without witnessing something disturbing. The massage rooms, the recruiters, the girls who looked far too young to be there. Wolff's lawyers argue this is precisely why discovery matters so intensely. They want to ask Melania Trump questions under oath, direct questions, uncomfortable questions. Did you ever witness a minor at Epstein's residence? Did you ever receive financial compensation from Epstein? Did Epstein assist you with immigration matters? These aren't accusations, they're questions, and questions are exactly what Melania Trump appears determined to avoid at all costs, which leads us to another long-standing mystery that's never been adequately explained. Melania Trump entered the United States on an EB-1 visa, commonly called the Einstein visa. It's reserved for individuals demonstrating extraordinary ability in their field, Nobel Prize winners, Olympic champions, international icons who've achieved unprecedented recognition. Melania was a working model, but not a globally dominant one. For years, observers have questioned how that visa was approved. Wolff's filing doesn't claim to have definitive proof. Instead, it raises pointed speculation about influence, specifically whether Epstein, who was known to assist models with immigration complexities, played a role. Again, this is not a proven finding. It's an inquiry, but inquiries are exactly what defamation lawsuits can unleash. And that's where Melania Trump's legal strategy may have catastrophically backfired. By threatening to sue, she opened the door to Discovery. And Discovery doesn't care about protecting reputations. It cares about emails, calendars, financial records, old contacts, text messages, bank statements. Wolff doesn't need to prove every detail is absolutely true. He only needs to demonstrate that he had reasonable grounds to believe his reporting was accurate. If he succeeds, the defamation case collapses. If he fails, the discovery process still happens anyway. It's the ultimate legal trap. And it explains why this fight has become so vicious. For decades, Melania Trump has carefully cultivated an image of distance. She speaks rarely. She reveals almost nothing. She maintains control through strategic absence. Her supporters call it dignity. Her critics call it coldness. But Wolff's filing suggests an entirely different interpretation. That her silence isn't emotional detachment, it's damage control, it's containment. Because if she admits she was present in those spaces, she admits she witnessed things. And if she witnessed things, she transforms from bystander to witness. And if she remains silent despite what she saw, that silence becomes part of the historical record. Not necessarily criminal, but absolutely consequential. So why isn't this story dominating every news cycle? Why isn't it screaming from every headline? Because 2026 doesn't function like previous eras. Media ecosystems are shattered. Press access has been systematically restricted. Attention gets filtered through tribal loyalty and manufactured outrage. Stories don't simply disappear anymore. They get strategically buried beneath louder, more distracting narratives. And a $40 million documentary helps immensely with that burial. It floods the zone with carefully crafted imagery. It reframes the subject through soft lighting and emotional music. It gives supporters something polished and professional to point toward. Art transforms into alibi. Spectacle becomes shield. But legal documents don't care about red carpet premieres. The contrast is brutal and impossible to ignore. On one screen, Melania Trump glides gracefully through ornate ballrooms draped in designer gowns. On another screen, a nurse lies dead in Minneapolis snow. And in the background, court filings circulate quietly, alleging that the First Lady's past is far more complicated than she's ever publicly acknowledged. It feels disturbingly like a modern let them eat cake moment, except the cake costs a movie ticket, and the consequences are playing out in courtrooms. Even the documentary's director adds another layer of dark irony. Brett Ratner himself, a figure associated with misconduct allegations, directing a film engineered to sanitize another person surrounded by deeply troubling questions, the snake consuming its own tail, the system protecting itself. The documentary premieres this Friday. Donald Trump claims it's selling out theaters. Industry tracking data suggests otherwise, but box office numbers are ultimately irrelevant here because the courtroom will be packed regardless. If Wolff's tapes get authenticated, if his sources withstand scrutiny, if the allegations survive procedural challenges, then the Melania presented on screen becomes merely one version among many. A projection, a carefully constructed ghost. The real Melania would be the one answering questions under oath, the one forced to finally confront the simplest yet most dangerous question imaginable. What did you see? This story isn't fundamentally about proving guilt or innocence. It's about whether power can permanently outrun accountability, whether carefully cultivated image can outpace documented record, whether strategic silence can survive the brutal scrutiny of legal discovery, and whether the final unresolved chapter of the Epstein saga focuses not on a dead predator, but on the people who stood close enough to witness his crimes and chose to look away. So what do you believe? Is Michael Wolff an opportunist chasing relevance through sensationalism? Or is Melania Trump the missing piece in a puzzle that powerful forces never wanted completed? The documentary premieres January 30th. We'll be watching, not to judge the film itself, but to compare its carefully edited narrative against the raw, unsealed legal documents. Those documents are linked below. Read them yourself. Decide for yourself. Because in the end, the truth doesn't care about production value or public relations campaigns. The truth simply waits, and discovery is coming.